This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Mary.
My name is Mary. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mary.
And I thought there was going to be about 100 birthdays. They led me to believe that there was going to be a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, it's nice to be here. Thank you. My birthday is March 27th, and I will be sober 34 years. Woohoo! Ow! I've been really lucky in my sobriety because I loved AA since I got here, you know, and it's been real easy for me. People are walking out. What did I do wrong? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not taking it personally. I don't care. I'll get over it. Anyway, so anyhow, I'll just tell you what it was like. I grew up in the South Bay, just right down the road from here. And, you know, I'm not sure what my childhood was like because I used to think it was one thing because of what, you know, you get sober, you think, oh, you had this terrible childhood, you know, because everybody had a terrible childhood. And then after a while, you realize it wasn't as bad as you thought. So that's what now I don't know what was real and what wasn't real, you know, and so anyway. Because of my baby pictures, I'm a happy little kid. You know, I was a happy little kid and when I was a little girl. I remember, though, that when I was really young, I did think that I was, like, dropped out of outer space from a spaceship or something, and that I was forced to fit in with human beings. And I just didn't feel right about me. And I know that that was truly the way I felt when I was a little girl. I remember that. And anyway, the years passed, and my parents got divorced. We moved to Las Vegas for a minute and a half, and then we came back, and I started going to high school in Manhattan Beach. And my parents were really kind of broke, and Manhattan is a pretty expensive area. And so I started feeling really less than. You know, I didn't have, you know, my parents didn't know anything about college or anything like that. Now you're taping this. I hope I outlive my mother. Anyway. Anyway, I felt less than, you know, I felt, I don't know, there was a lot of reasons, I guess, that I felt less than, but anyway, I truly did, and so I started to hang around with first the swim team at Maricosta, that's where I went to high school, and then I started hanging around with surfers, and this was in the early 60s, 1964 is when I graduated, and all the surfers drank Red Mountain wine and beer and tequila, and everybody drank. It seemed like, you know, maybe I was wrong, but it seemed like everybody drank. And it was so much fun. You know, we'd go to all these surfing contests up and down the coast, and, you know, there was all these keg parties, and, you know, we even had toga parties, and, you know, it was like nobody really thought about being a sophisticated drinker. You know, I'd watch these Fred Astaire movies and everything, and, like, we never drank cocktails. We drank out of big jugs of wine, you know, and we just wanted to get, you know, wild and crazy. And so I started drinking a lot. And it was, I never wanted to drink like an adult. I always wanted to have fun. I just wanted to drink till I got really drunk. Around somewhere in the middle 60s, the hippie thing happened up in Northern California, and all of a sudden, you know, psychedelics came down the coast, and so, you know, the surfer boys, some of them, there were bad boys and good boy surfers. The bad surfers, you know, they came from broken homes. They lived in a garage or something like that. And the good boy surfers, you know, they lived on the Strand in Manhattan and had rich families, blah, blah, blah. And later they became drug smugglers, I'm happy to say. They were corrupted by money. Anyway, but for a while, you know, there was good guys and bad guys. The bad guys worked at the lighthouse, and, you know. So anyway, I started hanging around. I had a Ricky in each group. There was a good guy Ricky and a bad guy Ricky, and I fell mad in love with both of them. One of them went away to the boot camp, you know, because the Vietnam War was happening, and he became a I forgot where it is, where you don't have to go to war, but you pretend like you're, I don't know. Anyway, he was National Guard. Is that what that is? Anyway. So anyway, when he went away, you know, I was madly in love with the other Ricky, who died of a wet brain. Anyway, and the bad guy Ricky, he used to, you know, shoot heroin and, you know, and they were friends of ours, shot speed, Obitrol. I don't know if anybody used that. Great drug. And, you know, anyway, so I started getting high with bad boy Ricky, and good boy Ricky, he didn't like that, so we weren't going to happen anyway. But anyway, so that was all over with. And my aunt, I had this aunt that worked at Paramount Pictures, and for some reason she helped me get a job there. And it was really weird because my mother has always had the most lowest tolerance for alcoholics, and she did not get along with her sister at all. And my aunt, for some reason, called my mother and said she'd help me get a job at Paramount. It was the weirdest thing. So anyway, I got this job at Paramount Pictures, and really I felt less than. You know, here I'm at the beach feeling less than, and then I get to Hollywood feeling less than, and I thought everybody had Taylors, and, you know, everybody was rich, they all had Mercedes, blah, blah, blah. And so I got to the studios, and I was using all kinds of speed and, you know, drinking. I started drinking wine at work, and but I got in a union. Ha, 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 ha. So, you know, I got some seniority, and get rid of me. Try it, you know. Anyway, and that was in this era when the studios, you know, they were giving directors cocaine with their deal, you know. So, so they were really permissive about, you know, drug abuse and alcoholism and everything. And so anyway, I just muddled my way through, and I was hanging around at the Whiskey A Go-Go every night. And, you know, I started getting arrested, and things started going badly, you know. I got all those fines and everything like that, and I just, you know, I was spending all my money on alcohol and drugs. I hardly ever bought any nice clothes or anything. I was just, you know, somehow I was hanging in there. I was way luckier than I should have been, but anyway, things weren't going very well, and finally, I called this boss that had fired me because I was drinking wine on the job, and I started slurring when I'd answer his phone. It was the secretary. And so he fired me, and I called him up, and I said, oh no, he said, when he answered the phone and he heard my voice, he said, "Don't ever call me again because you're drunk," which hurt my feelings. Why would it hurt my feelings? I'd been arrested like 4 times. And, you know, I knew people weren't inviting me over anymore because I'd take Red Devils and stuff and fall off the roof or scream and yell. I mean, I was so uncool. I was just this pig drunk, you know, and drug abuser. And so anyway, things were not going well. And when he said that to me, it kind of broke my heart. But then after a little pause, he said, "But if you call me tomorrow, I'll call AA for you." And you know, I don't know why. I have no idea to this day why I called him the next day. You know, it was people, they come to the meetings and, like you were saying, you know, you're sober for a while and then you go out and come back, you know. That window of opportunity that allows you to get sober, you know, that moment of clarity, whatever it is, I think that's so precious. You know, I have never had a bottle of O'Doul's. I never would, because you know what? There's a part of me that wants to get drunk, wants to get fucked up. Excuse me. But, you know, and I don't want to do anything that's going to awaken that monster, because there is one in me. I know it, you know. And so anyway, this guy's name was Ramsey, and I said, "Okay, I'll call you tomorrow." And I called a couple of secretaries that worked at Paramount, and they knew this woman, Jenny Gates, and she had 12 years on the program, and they said, "Well, call Jenny. She'll take you to a meeting." And so I called this woman, Jenny, and we met in the valley. And, you know, at the beach, I always have to tell this, but at the beach, we thought everybody from the valley was so lame. You know, it was like the lamest place. And so, you know, to get sober in the valley, I mean, it was like I went to hell to get sober, you know. Anyway, the first meeting I went to was in this bank basement. It was back in the days when everybody smoked. I mean, every room was like, half the room was filled with smoke. And, I mean, the top half. And, and all I remember from that first meeting was there was a motorcycle cop, and he was very funny. Everybody's laughing. It was really crowded. It seems like there was people hanging off the walls. And I don't know why, but I went home that night, and I didn't drink. It was like, I don't know why I didn't drink. I just didn't drink. And so the next day, well, they told me I should go back the next day. So I called my mother the next day because I started feeling kind of sick. And I called her up and I said, Mom, I feel really sick. I had a Vespa motor scooter. I said, they want me to drive my Vespa to the valley. I'm really sick. I went to an AA meeting last night. I'm really sick. They want me to come back for a second meeting tonight. And I thought she would say, oh, you poor thing. You're sick. It's cold outside, full moon. I had all this whole list. And she started bawling her eyes out. She started crying so hard. And I never, till that instant, knew how much I hurt my mother, because she had no tolerance for alcohol. And here I was shooting heroin. She knew it. She caught me. And I was drunk all the time, and, and it just really broke her heart. And so when she started crying, I knew that that's when I finally got clarity on that. And so I went to that next meeting, and it was at Radford Clubhouse. And that night I went home, and I dumped out all my alcohol afterwards. And I haven't drank since my first meeting. I haven't used anything since my first meeting. And 34 years later. And I did not know the day before I came that I was not going to drink 34 years. Well, it won't be 34 years till March 27th, but I feel pretty comfortable it'll happen. Anyway, so, it was a miracle. And so anyway, I started going to AA meetings, and my sponsor at the time, she said, well, you should go to meetings closer to home. Well, East Hollywood had these great AA meetings. There were really lots of fun. When you go to AA and you're new, I don't know about you guys, but I isolated a lot in the very end of my drinking. And I would, I didn't want to be around people. I wanted to sit home with my wine, which I'd load up my Vespa with 2 half-gallons of wine and a case of beer on the floorboard. I had it all stacked up perfectly. Anyway, and then I'd get really drunk. It was like I wasn't going to go out. Nobody liked me anymore, blah, blah, blah. But then I'd get really drunk, and I'd say, oh, well, I want to go find Mr. Wonderful or something, And so then I'd get on my scooter, and I'd ride up on the Quaaludes, And I'd fall off my motor scooter. So anyway, but I got sober. I came to AA meetings, and for some reason, even though the guys weren't surfers, they weren't movie stars, they weren't studio executives, they weren't anything that I thought, were my dreamboats, but I liked AA. I really did. And, I went to this meeting on Wednesday nights in Hollywood called the Las Vegas Group. And in the back, it was kind of dark in the front, and the speaker was up with the podium, or lectern, if you prefer. And there was lights on the podium, but in the back, especially where the coffee was, it was kind of dark. And in the back, there was these bad guys. And woohoo, I was in love. So, attraction rather than promotion. I tell you, whatever keeps you coming back. To this day, I think about, sometimes I go home and it's kind of warm in my apartment and cozy, and I think, why do I keep wanting to go to meetings? And, I still go to a lot of meetings, and I'm sober quite a while. And it's like, I want to come and see the people, and I know a lot of that element is because there's a boy there, I'm not too good at women's stags. Anyway. So, I started to go to meetings, and I got a crush. I got an obsession on a guy when I had 30 days. I used to go everywhere he went, that I thought he went to anyway. I got my license taken away right after I got sober. And so, so I'd go to meetings, and one time I went to this meeting at the Women's Club on La Brea, and he had this big Volkswagen van. It was green. And anyway, I looked for it in the lot, and I didn't see it. And I thought, and so I prayed to my higher power. I said, please help me stand the meeting if Tony's not there. And that was the first time I prayed to my higher power. Anyway, so I managed to sit through the meeting, and I just started to go to meetings, love meetings. I started to meet people at meetings. When I had 10 months, the secretary of the Las Feliz group asked me to be the 20-minute speaker, and, people, throughout my sobriety, I have got this gift that I never, ever appreciated until a few years back, but people like to hear my laugh, and so, and I was at a meeting one night. I was going to speak, and I was in the bathroom. I was in one of the stalls, and these girls came in, and one asked the other one, who's going to speak tonight? And this one girl said to the other, oh, that girl that laughs at her own jokes. I said, that's me. I bring my own laugh track. Ha, ha, ha. So anyway, so it works for me. Anyhow, so that's how my sobriety started, just going to all these meetings. I got there's this older couple, I don't know why, but they used to start taking us to coffee after meetings, to Piper's and stuff, and I started getting fat because, all of a sudden at 10 o'clock at night you're eating a full meal, and, but that's okay. You do what you got to do. Anyway, I started going to meetings. I got a job back at Paramount, and I decided, after not very long that I must be a genius. You come to AA and everybody's supposed to be really smart. Well, I'm really smart, huh? So I decided I wanted to get into post-production, and so I was a newcomer. And if you're new tonight, I always say this, but it's true. If you're new and you have a passion about something, go for it, because now is when you have that. You're like a stick of dynamite, Watch out, nobody can get in your way. And that's what happened to me. I got into the Editors Guild. It was a union, and it was a bigger union than the one I was in. But it was like really hard to get into. I was just a secretary. My aunt had died. I had no more nepotism, which is the key to success in Hollywood. But I just started torturing this guy who was head of post-production. He was supposed to be the meanest man in the world. But, I didn't really know that. And I would just see him on the street. I'd go up and, Paul, when are you going to get me in the union? When are you going to get me in the union? And he'd be talking to some big producer or something. And, Paul, when are you going to get me in the union? And I got this job because I decided I wasn't going to take any more full-time jobs until I got in the union. So I got this job. It was a secretarial job. And I was working for this guy. And in the bathroom, you could look out the window, and you could look down on the street, and Paul's office was right there. And I would see him out on the street. I'd run down there, Paul, when are you going to get me in the union? Finally, he surrendered. So anyway, I got in the union. I got stuck in this little department, though, that looked like the end of the road. But, luck I've always had. Somehow I got this good luck. I think it's because I showed up. I showed up and I did the best I could. And so I got this other job. And then I got on this TV movie of the week. It was a miniseries. And it was a big, huge thing made in Japan. And we finished off in California at Paramount. And then I got moved up again in my little career. And then the editor on that and I went to another studio to do another project, and then we started moving around, and I became a freelance assistant editor, and that career lasted for I was in the motion picture industry for like 34 years, and I retired in 2004 with a pension. Woohoo! So I think that's a good thing. Anyway, but along the way, I stayed sober from that first meeting, and, when I had 4 years, I got some time I got to fill up, so I'm going to tell you all my stupid stories. Anyway, about 4 years sober, I started going to meetings and looking around at my girlfriends, and they were all getting married to doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. And I started thinking, why don't I have a boyfriend? Because I went to speak at the Venice Circle one night, and the speaker was I was the main speaker. He was the first speaker. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, and I had seen him around meetings, and I said, hey, do you want to go to coffee after the meeting? Actually, I think I said roller skating because that was a big deal then. And he said, okay, but he didn't have roller skates, so we ended up going to coffee. And in about a week, he moved in with me. So I finally had my first boyfriend. But before that happened, though, I really had taken an inventory on men to see why it was that I was not able to get it together with somebody. And I realized through this inventory that, you know, I have this thing where if a guy likes me, I don't like them. And if they don't like me, I'll die for them, you know. And so I realized then that I was like a very sick person. I knew it was terminal. There was no cure for it. But I did what I always did. I just kept going to meetings, you know. It was like, go to meetings, go to meetings. If you can't fix it, just go to meetings. So I went to meetings. And that's when I went to that Venice Circle, and that's when I met Chris. He was my boyfriend for a couple of years. And then he decided he wanted to be alone. Ha! And, you know, I went to meetings brokenhearted. You know, girls, if you're brokenhearted, I went to meetings. I saw him kiss and nuzzle his new girlfriend right in front of my face. I mean, it was horrible. It was so painful. But I did not drink, you know. And the reason, and I realized later on that, you know, I didn't feel, you know, before he left me, I didn't think I was that in love with him or anything like that. But as soon as he left me, I decided that he was the love of my life, and I wanted him back bad. It was my ego. You know, my ego couldn't bear it that some guy would walk out on me, you know. And so I would go to, you know, I was all brokenhearted, but it wasn't really for real. It was all my ego, you know. And so anyway, once we were together for a couple of years, and I actually did feel a lot of affection for him, and I realized that I could actually like somebody that liked me. So that kind of broke down that, you know, thing that I thought was a really bad thing about me. I've still never been married. I've still never had any kids. But you know what? It works for me. Anyway, I'm really a very happy person today. And anyway, so I went through my career thing where I had to beat down doors for that, and then I had that romance thing. Finance. Oh, my God. When I got about 9 years sober, this is sort of appropriate to this time. I went to the bank and got a credit card, and this is before credit cards were available every 5 seconds. And so I went to this bank, and it was Security Pacific. That's what it was. And I asked them if I could have a credit card, and they said, well, we'll give you a student credit card. It's not really a credit card, but we'll give you a number. And if you do whatever you're supposed to do for 6 months, then we'll give you a real credit card. Well, I said, thank you. And I walked out of there, and I went to Bank America. I said, I just got a credit card from Security Pacific. Here's the number. I want a credit card. They gave it to me. Ah, ha, 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 ha. And so 24 credit cards later. See, I was a poor kid that had nothing. So, you know, give me credit cards and I'm going to go shopping. And so I did. Anyway, I was freelancing by this time, and, you know, all of a sudden I wasn't working. And all of a sudden I'm laying at home. The mailbox is full of, you owe money. The phone was ringing off the hook of bill collectors, you know, screaming at me. And I would lay on my bed and know that I did it myself. You know, there was no way. I didn't do it drunk. I did it sober. You know, everything that was wrong in my life at that moment was because of what I did sober. And so again, you know, go to meetings. That's all you can do. You can't fix it, go to meetings. So I went to, we had a Thursday night gong show meeting up at Ohio Street. And I went there one night and I was complaining from the podium. I always told the truth of what was going on with me in AA meetings. I don't agree with that. I always put on a happy, smiley face thing. I think that it's the miracle of the program to see how we get through our, how we overcome our difficulties. And how would you know if somebody overcame a difficulty if they didn't tell you they had a difficulty, you know? So I was always very open with stuff like that. And I got up to the podium and I said, I'm really in deep debt and I'm really scared about it. And somebody came up to me after the meeting and said, you should go to DA. And so I did. But, you know, I I'm not pitching DA, although it did help me through that period and another period, Debtors Anonymous. And so I managed to get through that. I paid it off the first time, not through the way DA suggested, because they are really hardcore. But I used the easier, softer way. Got through it, and then, 10 or 15 years later when it came back again, they said, well, if you do it the easier, softer way, it's going to come back. And, it did. But anyway, that was when in 2004, when I had to retire from showbiz. All of a sudden, I was living on credit cards and back in debt again. And I went to another meeting. And I was telling this girl right next to me, I said, man, I'm so deep in debt with these credit cards and everything. I got to file bankruptcy or something. She said, oh, there's a bankruptcy lawyer right there. So that was the only time I filed bankruptcy. But, the guy was right in the meeting. It's like amazing. And so anyway, so I got through that. I was, I went to a meeting, and I was always sharing. It was the Overton meeting over here in Santa Monica about, I was broke, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't have a job anymore, and I didn't have any hope of getting a job, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And she kept telling me that there was a mixer in the Marina that was for showbiz people that were looking for work. And, I was a member of a union for many decades by this time, and I thought, well, I'm not going to go to a Marina mixer because they're not going to help me. I'm in the IATSE, for God's sake. Anyway, but, I got so broken, so desperate. Finally, I went to that place, and it was pretty much what I expected. A lot of actors, writers, stuff like that, which is a good thing if you're starting out in the business, and that's your field, because you do get to meet people. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. It is a good thing to get, as I took acting class at Santa Monica College a while back, and it's really nice to feel like you're part of the group you want to be in, Anyway, but they couldn't help me get a job in my field. So, but on the wall, like there was a sign. And I was 56 or something by then. I'm 62. I just turned 62. And on the wall it said, senior housing, 55 and over. And I knew that was cheap. Ha, ha, ha. So I went and read the sign. I wrote down the number, and they said to go to Fairfax and something. And so I went over there, and they had something that wasn't either a good fit. But I looked on a calendar, and there was a thing. It said, Montecito Apartments. Senior housing, 55 and over. And I knew people in AA that lived there, and some of them were like jet setters, and I said, wow, if it's good enough for them, it must be good enough for me. So I got this apartment at the Montecito, and I moved to Hollywood. I live about a mile from where I got high all those years ago. And I have this great place, and the rent is affordable, and I just retired, and I can afford it now because, I've lived pretty frugally since my bankruptcy. And so for me, everything has, if I keep going to meetings, I get the answers to whatever it is. And I'll tell you what, I'm not done yet because I have another fabulous story to tell you. But, time passes. I've never had anything in my sobriety that didn't clear up if I just let enough time pass. It's you don't think it's ever going to go away. If you have a broken heart, it's never going to go away. If you owe money, it's never going to be okay. Blah, blah, blah. But it is always okay. People work with you, or you get over it. You find somebody else you fall in love with, and you forget all about the other one, That's what happened to me many times. Anyhow, 1997. There I was, minding my own business in Venice. And all of a sudden I started getting sick. I started getting puffy and purple and horrible. It was horrible. Anyway, I had medical insurance for a long time because I was in that union. And they told me I had, a while back, they said, you have non-A, non-B hepatitis. And I thought they were crazy. I was never yellow. I mean, nothing ever happened to me, even though I was shooting dope and everything. Nothing ever happened. And then years went by, and all of a sudden they said, well, you have hepatitis C. But it was like not doing anything, so I didn't think too much about it. And anyway, and then this one doctor, he said, well, you should go on interferon. And so I went on that, and it was, I was, lately they've been saying the stock market is down at the level it was in 1997. And that's the year I had my liver transplant. And I tell you, before I had my transplant, I was so depressed from that interferon, and I thought the whole economy is going down the toilet. And now to find out in 1997 was as bad as it is right now almost. I was probably right. Anyway, but so I was working on this TV series, and I was going to work. They kept me working even though I could barely make it out there. I had a Honda Civic. The air conditioner broke. I was driving out to work in like 90-degree weather, so hot, all puffed up, purple ace bandages on my ankles because I was so swollen up and everything. And anyway, all of a sudden I went home from work one day in Venice, and I started feeling real confused, and I called my doctor, and he said, get over to Cedars right now. So I went to Cedars, and they admitted me, and 3 days later I got a liver transplant. Woo! And so and all through that, I was in the hospital for 2.5 months because my body got a toxic reaction to the drugs. Isn't that funny? Anyway, so I was in the hospital for 2.5 months. And when I was in the hospital, I lost the ability to walk, talk, move my arms. I could not move my arms like that. I couldn't move in the bed. The nurses would come in and they'd say, move up in the bed. I couldn't. I was like a sack of cement. And so when I finally, at the end, when they gave me some physical therapy, but I think that they didn't think I would, come out of it, really. They were pretty sure I was kind of a semi-goner. But, I started going to meetings. The answer is always go to meetings. And I would first I went in my little wheelchair. I had a little wheelchair, and then I started going in my little walker. And then slowly I started to learn how to walk again. I started to be able to, at first I couldn't get off a curb. I was so afraid I would fall over because you can't bend, you're not used to that stiff way you are after surgery like that. And when you have complications, a lot of time it's not like that, but for me it was like that. And anyway, as the years went by, I started getting better. And the very end of my story is in 2004, when I moved into that building, I came from a poor family. We didn't have an education, none of that stuff. I was just lucked out getting that job at Paramount. Why those miracles all happened to me, I don't know, but I've had a whole bunch of them in my life. And then, but when I lost that job at the studios, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a pension, but it wasn't enough, but I went to a residence meeting in that building I moved into because I'm used to going to meetings, right? So I raised my hand to share about my latest brainstorm. And after that meeting, this guy came up to me and he said, the LA Opera is hiring. LA Opera, I don't know anything about opera. I don't know anything about anything that's cultural or anything that's education oriented or... I went down to the opera. They hired me because I was in showbiz, And I worked there for 4 years. I actually became assistant manager, big deal. But, I learned all about the operas. I became an opera fan. All this, and I could hardly speak when I got out of the hospital. All of a sudden, I'm speaking about Italian operas and French operas and German operas, and I became like this authority on opera. And it was like, these kind of things just don't happen to regular people, I don't think. Anyway, I am so grateful to be sober. My mom was visiting me for 6 days, and she had never... I'd gone to visit her. My mom and I are very closely... We're in touch all the time. Once a week, I talk to my mom. It was sort of my amends to her, was to start calling her every week and see how she's doing, and we became great friends. Anyway, she decided she wanted to come and visit me, so she came down, and I realized that she has a lot more fear than I ever remembered, and she's very, worried that she'll get in the way or something. I mean, it was really, she's almost paralyzed with her own mind, And I realized how lucky we are in AA because, we get so free in here, and we are used to communicating with people. And she's really active in a church, and I think that's great when you're really involved with your faith. But once she said to me, how much she admired me for being in AA or envied me. And I said, well, you're in church, you have your church group. And she said, well, I never tell them what's going on. And, you know, we're so lucky in AA because we really share the truth about each other. And it gives us some kind of, you know, we have the energy, we have this sort of thing about us that we really have some power. And so I'm so grateful to be sober. And thank you, Richard, for inviting me. Thank you, Neil.
All right, Mary.